My mom tapped her crystal wine glass at Sunday dinner, cleared her throat, and announced to the whole family, "Your brother and his two kids are moving into your four-bedroom house next month." She didn't ask me. She didn't consult me. She just smiled like she'd handed down a royal decree. My brother, Jason, grinned, already celebrating his free ride, while my sister-in-law was on her phone picking out new paint colors for my living room. My lawyer had texted me an hour before dinner, warning me to fight this family entitlement before it ruined me. But as everyone cheered around the table, I just smiled, took a sip of water, and said, "All right, let them." What my mom and Jason didn't know was that a month earlier, I'd signed the final closing papers on the house. They weren't moving into my home. They were moving directly onto someone else's private property. My name is Claire, and at 34 years old, I had spent most of my adult life learning one fundamental rule. In my family, my brother Jason's wants always superseded my actual needs. I had worked 60 hours a week as a project coordinator, lived on strict budgets, and saved every penny to purchase my four-bedroom suburban house entirely on my own. Meanwhile, Jason, 2 years older, had spent his 20s and 30s coasting from one failed luxury investment scheme to another, perpetually funded by our parents. The monthly family dinner was supposed to be a standard, quiet affair at my parents' house. But as soon as the main course was served, my mother tapped her crystal wine glass, cleared her throat, and stood up with a radiant, commanding smile. The entire room went quiet. "I have a wonderful announcement," she declared, looking at me with an expression that offered no room for argument. "Your brother and his two kids are moving into your house next month. It's 4 bedrooms, Claire. You're just one person sitting in all that unused space. It only makes sense for family to help family." She didn't ask me. She didn't consult me. She spoke as if she were handing down a royal decree. Sitting across from me, Jason grinned, raising his glass in a mock toast, clearly celebrating the idea of living rent-free in a fully upgraded suburban home. His wife, Sarah, was already scrolling on her phone, commenting aloud about how they'd need to repaint the living room and turn my home office into a playroom for the kids. Just an hour before dinner, my real estate attorney had called me, warning me to prepare for a fight because my mother had been making discreet inquiries about my property deeds. My jaw tightened as I looked around the table. For years, I had been the reliable, quiet daughter who swallowed her frustration to keep the peace. They expected me to protest, to cry, or to negotiate terms. Instead, I looked my mother straight in the eye, took a calm sip of my water, and smiled. "All right," I said smoothly. "Let them move in." My mother blinked, stunned by how easily I surrendered. Jason chuckled, thinking he had completely broken my spirit. What none of them realized was that I wasn't surrendering. I was setting a trap. Exactly 30 days prior, I had signed the final closing papers on the house. In less than 3 weeks, the property would legally belong to a total stranger, and my family was walking right into a nightmare of their own making. In the weeks following that Sunday dinner, Jason's audacity reached levels that would have infuriated the old version of me. Now, it only fueled my quiet amusement. He didn't just plan on moving in, he acted as though he was taking over a estate that was rightfully his. It started with the text messages. At first, it was simple requests, but within days, it escalated into full-blown demands. Jason sent me a spreadsheet listing which pieces of my furniture he wanted removed to make space for his designer leather couches, the ones he'd bought on credit during his last failed business venture. Sarah texted me a color palette for the master bedroom, casually mentioning that they'd be taking the upstairs suite with the walk-in closet and jet tub, while suggesting I move my personal belongings down into the unfinished basement. "It just makes practical sense, Claire," my mother said over the phone when I didn't immediately reply to Sarah's texts. "They have 2 growing children. You're single. You don't need all that space, and frankly, having you in the basement suite gives them the privacy a proper nuclear family needs." "Of course, Mom," I replied, keeping my voice entirely neutral. "Whatever makes the transition easier." They took my passivity as weakness. Jason even had the nerve to demand the house keys 2 weeks early so his contractors could come in and tear down the wall between the kitchen and living room for an open-concept feel. I calmly told him that the locks were being serviced, and he would get access on the agreed-upon date, the first of the month. While they were busy celebrating their hostile takeover, planning renovation budgets they couldn't afford, and picking out tile samples, I was quietly dismantling my entire life right under their noses. I took 2 weeks off work to pack my belongings. Professional movers came during the day while Jason and my parents were at work, quietly clearing out every piece of furniture, every frame, and every memory I owned. I had already signed a lease on a secure, luxury high-rise apartment downtown, a place with keycard elevators, 24-hour concierge, and a strict no-unannounced guests policy. By the 28th of the month, my house was completely empty. Cleaned, prepped, and ready for its actual new owners, who had paid $200,000 above asking price in cash. The funds from the sale cleared into my private account, completely eliminating my remaining mortgage debt and giving me a massive financial cushion. Every night, Jason would send a group chat update about how excited the kids were to move into their new home. I would simply reply with a smiling emoji, counting down the days until the trap finally snapped shut. The morning of the first arrived, bright and clear. I woke up in my new downtown apartment, made myself a fresh cup of coffee, and pulled up my laptop to watch the storm unfold. I still had access to the smart doorbell camera at the old house, which the new owners hadn't swapped out yet, and the feed gave me a front row seat to the spectacle. At precisely 9 in the morning, a massive, 26-foot rental truck pulled into the driveway, followed closely by my mother's sedan. Jason stepped out of the cab, wearing a smug smile, holding a cup of coffee like he was the king of the neighborhood. My mother got out of her car, already directing the 2 hired movers on where to unload the heavy sectional sofa first. Sarah and the kids were in the back seat, pointing up at the house. Jason walked up the front porch steps, pulled out his phone, and dialed my number. I let it ring twice before answering. "Claire, we're here," Jason said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Where are you with the keys?" "The movers are charging by the hour." "Oh, I'm already settled in my new place, Jason," I said calmly. "The door should be unlocked. Go ahead and try the handle." Jason scoffed, reached for the brass handle, and turned it. The door swung open. But instead of entering an empty house ready for his family, Jason found himself staring directly at a broad-shouldered man in his late 40s, holding a clipboard and looking intensely annoyed. Standing right behind him was a uniformed private security guard. "Can I help you?" the man with the clipboard asked, his voice stern and cold. Jason blinked, stepping back in confusion. "Who the hell are you?" "This is my sister's house. Move aside, we're loading our stuff in." "Your sister doesn't live here," the man replied flatly. "I bought this property a month ago. The closing was finalized 3 days ago. You are currently trespassing on private property." Through the doorbell camera, I watched Jason's face drain of all color. My mother rushed up the steps, her voice screeching through the speaker. "That's impossible. This is my daughter's home. She would never sell it." "Ma'am, I have the deed right here," the new owner said, holding up a laminated document. "And if that moving truck isn't off my driveway in 2 minutes, my security officer here is calling the police." My phone buzzed again as Jason placed me on speakerphone. "Claire, what the hell is going on?" he screamed, his voice cracking with panic. "There's a strange man here saying he owns the house." I took a slow sip of my coffee, leaned back, and said, "He does, Jason. I sold it. Happy moving day." Less than 30 minutes after the driveway standoff, my phone exploded with a relentless stream of calls and violent text messages. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I poured another cup of coffee and waited. I knew they wouldn't just go away. My mother knew where my job was, but more importantly, Jason's wife had seen a photo I'd posted online a week prior showing the view from my new luxury apartment complex downtown. An hour later, the building's front desk called my intercom. The receptionist sounded flustered, reporting that a group of people was causing a massive scene in the lobby, demanding to see me. I gave permission for them to come up, knowing the building's strict security protocols and recorded hallway cameras would protect me from any real physical hostility. When the elevator doors opened on the 12th floor, my mother and Jason stormed down the hallway like a pair of charging bulls. My mother's face was flushed red, her eyes wide with unbridled rage, while Jason looked completely unraveled, sweat soaking through his shirt as the reality of his situation set in. "Have you lost your absolute mind?" my mother shrieked before she even reached my door. "How could you do this to your own flesh and blood? Your brother has 2 children standing out on a curb with a moving truck that's costing him $200 an hour. You ruined my life, Claire," Jason yelled, slamming his hand against the doorframe. "I put down deposits based on moving into that house. We gave up our old lease." I stood in my entryway, perfectly calm, wearing a comfortable lounge set, holding the heavy wooden door open just enough to look them dead in the eye. "I didn't ruin your life, Jason. You did," I said, my voice dropping to a sharp, cold register that instantly cut through their shouting. "For 15 years, Mom has forced me to clean up your financial disasters. You blew through your inheritance, you drained Dad's retirement fund on fake crypto schemes, and then you thought you could just march into my house and relegate me to my own basement. We are family," my mother screamed, tears of fury welling in her eyes. "You owe him." "I owe him nothing," I replied. "I bought that house with my own blood, sweat, and tears. I paid every cent of the mortgage while you both treated my hard work like common property. I sold that house a month ago. The sale paid off every debt I had, and the rest is sitting safely in an account you will never touch." Jason stared at me, his mouth open, finally realizing that the quiet, passive sister he had exploited his entire life was completely gone. The aftermath was swift and devastating for them. Without a home, and with their previous lease already terminated, Jason was forced to spend a chunk of his remaining credit to put his family up in an overpriced extended stay motel. Within 2 weeks, the reality of his situation set in. He had to downsize dramatically, moving his wife and 2 kids into a cramped, rundown 2-bedroom apartment on the far edge of town, funded entirely on his own dime, with no sister to subsidize his lifestyle. My mother tried every trick in her manipulation playbook. She sent flying monkey relatives to guilt-trip me, calling me heartless, selfish, and cruel. But for the first time in my life, their words had zero power over me. Every time a cousin or an aunt called to lecture me about family loyalty, I calmly laid out the facts: how Jason had drained our parents' savings, how he had demanded I move into my own basement, and how I had simply chosen to protect my own financial future. Unsurprisingly, once the extended family heard the full story, the angry phone calls stopped, and the quiet judgment turned toward my mother and Jason instead. My mother's financial hold over me was completely shattered. She realized that I was no longer the quiet daughter who could be bullied into compliance, and our relationship shifted to a cold, distant dynamic. I set firm, non-negotiable boundaries. If she wanted to be in my life, she was never allowed to bring up Jason's finances or demand my money ever again. Today, I wake up in my sunlit apartment overlooking the city, completely free of debt and toxic expectations.